There's a new day dawning, the time is at hand, where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in.
Let the King of Glory in. Open up the door. Starts right now. So fling wide, you heavenly gates, and prepare the way of the risen Lord. The Apostle John was on the island of Patmos. He was imprisoned for the testimony of Jesus Christ, and he heard a sound behind him. He said, behold, I looked. There was a door standing open in heaven. And I heard a voice which was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, come up here, and I will show you the things which must take place. That's what we need, my friends. We need a heavenly perspective of the things that are going on in the world around us, the things that the Word of God foretold us would come to pass, those things which must take place, those things which are taking place even now. That is what this broadcast is all about. Discussing the issues of the day, discerning the times in which we live from a biblical perspective and worldview. Good day, everybody. Andy White is here in the seat. And what you are about to hear is the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. I want to welcome everybody from all across the fruited plain and all around the spherical globe. Thanks for tuning in to this brand new edition of Open Up the Doors. And I've got a very serious topic today that I'll get to in a moment. But right now, let me get some of these preliminaries out of the way. We are streaming live on my Open Up the Doors Facebook page over at facebook.com/faithfm 91.7. That's facebook.com/faithfm 91.7. If you'd like to join in the conversation over there, comment on the stream, greet everybody over there. Let me know where you are watching and listening from. If you are outside of the Faith FM broadcast area and you don't even have access to the stream on Facebook, the best way to listen to Faith FM is to download the free app. We have the app both for the Android and Apple platforms. Just look it up in your respective app store. Great way to listen to great Christian broadcasting and programming here from the East End of Long Island. Just look up Faith FM in Sag Harbor and download the free app. Great resource to have. I do plan on going to the phones in the second hour. If you'd like to be part of the broadcast, write down the number right now, 631-725-2069, 631-725-2069, and be the first kid on the block to call in. All right, I'm going to jump right on it because I got a lot to get to, and it's serious, it's sobering. I want you to listen up because it's really not being talked a lot about in the Western media, in the American media, because we're distracted with a whole lot of other things. But folks, the U.S. and Israel are preparing, even as I speak right now, they are preparing to take out Iran's nuclear reactors and missile sites. And like I said, hardly anybody in the Western media is even talking about it. But Donald Trump is preparing, and Israel too, they're preparing to bomb Iran back into the Stone Age. And when I said bomb Iran, I just had a funny thought. Back in the early days of Rush Limbaugh, when we were in the Iraqi war, he used to do these spoofs and these I guess the spoof is the best word, but he used to have this tune called Bomb, 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 Iraq, Bomb, 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 Iraq. For all of you Rush babies out there, you might have missed that, but it was funny. Not that this is funny, but I just popped into my head because there's a lot going on that could really, really change the entire global geopolitical scene in a heartbeat, and it's just not really being spoken all that much about. Now, I have to ask the question: is it just saber rattling? It could be. Is it just a psyop? We know that Donald Trump loves to do these psyops to coerce people into the art of the deal. So this could just be a psyop in order to coerce Iran to the bargaining table. But it's to be moving the military assets around that he's moving around. This is it's making a statement, and we got to ask the question: are they seriously Are they seriously planning on taking out Iran's nuclear program militarily? And I do think they are. And if Iran is as close to breaking out with a nuclear bomb as has been reported, they need to do it really quick. But this raises a very pertinent question, and I'm saying all of that to get to this. Could this possibly become the literal fulfillment of the breaking of the bow of Elam as prophesied by the prophet Jeremiah in Jeremiah 49? And I'm going to get into that a little bit today, a little bit into the second block. But right now, I want to set the table with the latest developments of what is going on and what potentially could be a huge and a very dangerous situation. I mean, the situation is dangerous no matter what happens right now. Right now, it's really a bit of a lose-lose situation because of the ongoing threat of Iran and their nuclear ambitions, and they are so close. In fact, well, I've said this the last several years. I have no way to prove it. Personally, I do believe that. Again, this is just my own gut feeling. I have no proof. There's no way to prove it. But I have a feeling. I've had a feeling for the past couple of years that Iran already actually is in possession of nuclear warheads. But like I said, that's just my gut feeling. That aside, be that as it may, last week, a U.S. intelligence report stated that Iran could definitely go nuclear in less than a week. Now, that was a week ago. That means the timeline really is now. They are ready to go nuclear now. For the first time, according to this report, for the first time, the United States estimates that Iran has significantly shortened its path to a nuclear bomb with a breakthrough time of less than a week. Again, this what I'm reporting to you is already over a week old, or about a week old, following a dramatic increase in its stockpile of enriched uranium. The U.S. intelligence report and the commander of the U.S. Strategic Command warned that the situation has become extremely serious. Now, according to Sky News Arabia, in early March, which would have been about a month ago, and Trump did give, we all know this was publicized about a month ago, that Trump has given Iran a 2-month deadline to come to the bargaining table and give up its nuclear weapons. But just the other day, Sky News, and this is sort of an alleged letter. We know that Trump did send a letter. The administration never released the contents of that letter to the Ayatollah Khamenei, but Sky News supposedly got a copy of it, and they printed it out and published it about a week ago. And according to, and I'm going to say the alleged letter, because again, the White House didn't confirm that this was the actual content, although it does sound rather Trumpian. But anyway, the supposed letter that went to the Ayatollah last week, or actually last month, but only released a week ago, quote, from the desk of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, he writes, "Your Excellency Ayatollah Khamenei, with respect for your position and the people of Iran, I write this message to you with the aim of opening new horizons for our relations. Far from the years of conflict and misunderstanding we have witnessed in past decades, the time has come to abandon enmity and open a new chapter based on mutual cooperation and respect. Today, too, there is a historic opportunity before us." So Trump begins this letter with in a very diplomatic way, saying, "Hey, you know, we want to negotiate. We want to." He's very respectful of the Ayatollah. So he starts out in a very non-threatening way, but then the letter goes on. "The United States, under my leadership, is ready to take a major step toward peace and easing tensions. We can work together to lift sanctions, empower the Iranian economy, and open the doors of cooperation between our countries. This is not only in the interest of our peoples, but also in the interest of stability and peace in the Middle East and the entire world. We see that Trump is trying to hand out an olive leaf, an olive branch, so to speak. But then he says, "But I warn you," and this is where it gets really Trumpian. And I could definitely see this whole flow, this whole thing being pretty reasonably accurate. It just sounds so much like something he would do. The art of the deal, the art of negotiation, the art of diplomacy. He extends the olive branch. He extends his desires for peace and a working out of the situation. But then he goes on to say, "But I warn you. I warn you. If you reject this outstretched hand, and if the Iranian regime chooses the path of escalation and continued support for terrorist organizations and military adventures, then our response will be decisive and swift. We will not remain idle in the face of your regime's threats to our people or our allies." Peace is not weakness, Trump wrote. It is the choice of the strong. The Iranian people are a great people who deserve a better future, far from isolation, poverty, and suffering. If you are ready to negotiate, we are ready too. But if you persist in ignoring the demands of the world, history will record that you missed a tremendous opportunity. With respect, Donald Trump. Now, Trump on NBC News just last week, speaking with what's her name, Kristen Welker, said, told her I'd rather we resolve things when she asked about Trump's deadline and Trump's dealings with the Iranians. And Trump said to NBC News, he said, "I'd rather we resolve things. But if that doesn't happen, bad things will happen to them." Now, Iran has responded to Trump's letter this past week. And they simply doubled down. They simply heightened all the uncertainty that is going on with the situation. Iran's regime this past week, through Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, sounds more Japanese than Iranian, probably not pronouncing that name right, but Abbas Araghchi confirmed last Thursday, so a week ago from today, he confirmed last Thursday that the response to Trump's letter was delivered via Oman without revealing specific details, except Iran reiterated its distrust of the United States. And here's the key point. Iran reaffirmed its right to continue with its nuclear program. So after Trump, extending an olive branch, Iran is basically doubling down, which doesn't surprise me. But in its response, the Iranian government toughened its rhetoric, insisting it will not yield to U.S. pressure. Now, I have to say, after the last 4 years of Biden, they probably think they can keep playing the game. But there's a new sheriff in town, folks. But here's the thing. In response to Trump's letter, Iran, with the help of Russia and China, which I'm going to get to in a second here, has accelerated, that means sped up, its uranium enrichment to near weapons grade levels, while at the same time it has strengthened its ties with Russia and China. Now that raises the very next pertinent question. If Iran is attacked by America and Israel, how will Russia and China respond? That's the elephant in the room. Because just this past month, diplomats from Russia, Iran, and China, they met in Beijing in March to support Israel's nuclear weapons program. And to be clear, in the whole scheme of things, to give you the basic fundamental history of Iranian nuclear advancements. Iran has a nuclear weapons program precisely because of China. China helped Iran possess both missiles and uranium enrichment capability. So now, friends, the table is being set for a major military confrontation. It really, really is right at the precipice. And this isn't Andy just doing the sky is falling, Chicken Little stuff. There's been very little reporting on this, but the reporting that has been is that the White House has been bringing military assets into its air bases in the Indian Ocean. The table's being set. And the White House said that if Iran doesn't surrender its nukes, the U.S. will be activating a massive operation to end their nuclear program permanently. This past Sunday, Donald Trump said in a strong threat, and I mentioned this a moment ago, the conversation with NBC's Kristen Welker, he said, if the Iranians don't make a deal, there will be bombs. And they will be bombs like they've never been before. I can't do a Trump impersonation. There's some really great guys out there doing Trump impersonations. I'm not one of them. But I did see this. I did see the clip of this on the news. Trump said that. If the Iranians don't make a deal, there will be bombs. And they will be bombs like they've never seen before. Now, to back that up, this past week, the U.S., this was reported, the U.S. has brought in over 7 B-2 bombers to its air base in India. A U.S. official told the Axios news outlet that the surge of air power into the Pacific Indian region, including B-2 bombers sent to Diego Garcia, is linked to Trump's 2-month deadline for Iran. The buildup signals serious prep in case diplomacy collapses. Oh, who was the president that said, speak softly but carry a big stick? You know, dangle the carrot out there. And Trump was doing that. He's been saying, listen, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But you got to, along with the carrot, you got to carry a big stick. You know, peace through strength. So again, how much of this is literally they're going to do that? Are they going to pull the trigger? Well, the point is that, as I've often said in the past, if you keep saber rattling, sooner or later, somebody's going to get hurt. You keep rattling those sabers, sooner or later, you're going to get cut. And listen, folks, I've said this 1,001 times. I'm not a prophet, and I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day in a predictory sort of way. I don't have any inside information as to what's going down behind closed doors. I wish I did, but I don't. But all the indicators are that Trump, along with Israel, are going to go in and take out Iran's nuclear capabilities. And it's the catch-22. It needs to be done. There is no question it needs to be done. But if they do that, it is opening up excuse the terminology, a Pandora's box. Like I just said a moment ago, Russia and China are very invested in the Iranian nuclear program. And we are setting things up to take it out. We just moved 25% of the American fleet of B-2 bombers to the air base in Diego Garcia. That's huge. And the B-2 bombers they're exactly that. They're stealth. There's almost no way to stop them. And they carry the largest bunker buster bombs in the world. And I was reading a report the other day that said that if America wanted to take out Iran's nuclear sites, it would need about 6 or 7 B-2 bombers. Well, that's exactly what's been moved there. Now, Another report was released, I believe, 2 days ago, stating that the aircraft carrier Carl Vinson has left the Pacific island of Guam and is on its way to the Middle East and is expected to arrive mid to late April. So again, I don't know when this is all going to go down, but there's a lot of other intrigue going here. This came out the other day from Tehran, the Tehran Times, the English version of the Iranian newspaper, the Tehran Times, and Tehran has reported that that last week Iran began to load all of its missile sites. All of its missiles are loaded onto launches, and all the underground missile sites and are ready for launch. Iranian leader Ali Khamenei said, if the U.S. carries out Trump's threats, it will suffer a blow. Of course, he's going to say that. Again, the saber rattling is going back and forth. Point is to getting ready, folks. And then a report came out, again, this was either yesterday or the day before, that Iran is mulling. They're thinking about a preventive strike, a preemptive strike on Diego Flores, where we got all those B-2 bombers. They're thinking about taking them out before we do anything. Now, I don't know. It's hard to say what they're going to do because they're crazy. Remember, maybe I can get into this a little bit, bunny trail, but I've said so many times. Remember what these people are. Not the Iranian people, but the leadership, the ayatollahs, the imams and the ayatollahs in Iran. They are apocalyptic 12ers. They are Shia Muslims who believe, and I've talked about this many times on this broadcast, they believe that they must create and incite global chaos in order for the Mahdi to appear. So don't underestimate their lunacy, because their lunacy is influenced and founded upon a demonic doctrine of the end days. So all this stuff is in the mix. So Iranian military commanders are considering a preemptive strike on a joint U.S.-UK base on the Chagos Island, that's Diego Garcia, in the Indian Ocean, in an apparent attempt to deter President Donald Trump from launching a military attack on Iran, they said. And here's the thing, like any Iranian military attack, the art is to determine what is bluster and what is saber rattling and what is real. But it just keeps spiraling. If Iran is attacked, how does Russia and China get involved? If Iran is attacked, will they launch missiles into Europe? Again, it's that the ideology of a bunch of apocalyptic ideologues that believe a massive global world war will usher in the return of the Mahdi. And they are convinced that the time to do it is now. In fact, the commander of the IRGC Quds Force, Brigadier General Ismail Ghani, which there's another story about him that came out the other day, but the commander of the Quds Force that replaced Soleimani, that Trump took out several years back, Ghani said that Iran is planning to strike back at the U.S. and eliminate its presence from the Middle East. I mean, that's braggadocious, of course. Iran doesn't have the capabilities of doing that, but that's what they're saying. This is the rhetoric. And this guy Ghani said, we promise to continue Martyr Soleimani's path with the same strength and his martyrdom, which will be reciprocated in several steps by removing the U.S. from the region. Ghani said that the continuance of this movement, of what the Iranians are planning to do, is to reach the global governance of Imam Mahdi. May God hasten his appearance. This important goal will be attained under the Supreme Leader. I'm quoting that to underscore the fact that these people are not just thinking about their safety and their security and their peace. They are literally motivated by this apocalyptic eschatology that tells them they got to create this havoc to bring their Mahdi in. And Ghani is the leader of the Iranian Revolutionary Corps Guards. Now, having said all that, and I found out, I did some research and I found out it wasn't true. Just yesterday, well, actually came out 2 days ago on April 1st. People should have known it was an April Fool's joke, but it was a crazy April Fool's joke. But it was being reported the other day. And I saw someone post it, and I questioned it because it didn't really have a source. And then I said, if this really happened, this would be all over the news. But it came out on April 1st, 2 days ago, that this guy, Ishmael Gahani, defected to Israel, and he was safe and alive in Israel, and that he had been an Israeli spy all the time, and he gave Israel all the information about that, why Israel's been so successful. And I saw this the other day. I said, if that's true, this is huge. This is really huge news if this guy, Gahani, defected to Israel. But I was skeptical. So I did a whole bunch of research. I really tried to research it out because something that big could not stay hidden. It turned out to be fake news. It just turned out to be a April Fool's joke. But what a crazy, crazy thing to say. That could have global implications to do that on April Fool's. But from the best I could ascertain, that was not true. And what is true is that the world and the military powers that be, specifically us, we're gearing up for this seemingly major attack on these Iranian missile sites. The largest and the biggest being in the region that was once ancient Elam. And I will get back to that and how this might all play in together with the prophecy in Jeremiah 49 that has not been fulfilled yet. But keep it right here, and we'll keep going when I get back. Here's Daryl Evans, Hideaway. And I bet a lot of people right now want to go and hide away. But keep it right here. Don't run away. In Quad. And I'm going to get right back into what I want to get to because there's a lot here. So I'm going to skip over some of those other announcements I usually do at this moment in time. And I'll just save them for later or put them on the side because I want to get back to this because this is serious and a lot of people are asking these questions and I don't want to delay it. But there is this very enigmatic prophecy in Jeremiah chapter 49, where part of the prophecy, I'm going to read through the whole thing, it's not that long, but part of the prophecy is that God says, behold, I will break the bow of Elam. Now, Elam today is a large portion of modern Iran. It was a province of the Persian Empire back in Jeremiah's day. It sits right along the coast of the Persian Gulf. But I'm going to read this just as it is in Jeremiah 49. The word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah the prophet against Elam in the beginning of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah, saying, thus says the Lord of hosts, behold, I will break the bow of Elam. That means God's going to crush their power. He's going to break their power. I will break the bow of Elam, the foremost of their might. Against Elam, I will bring the four winds from the four quarters of heaven. I will bring the four winds from the four quarters of heaven. And I'm going to scatter them, the people of Elam. I'm going to scatter them toward all those winds. There will be no nations where the outcasts of Elam will not go. I'm going to stop for a second right there. Rhetorically, I'm going to ask the question, will they be scattered because of nuclear radiation? This is where a lot of Iran's largest nuclear reactors are. Now they've got them all over the nation, in the mountains and buried and stuff. But God is saying that the people of Elam are going to be scattered. So, in modern terms, what would scatter them? If a war breaks out and we drop these bunker busting bombs on these reactors, a lot of radiation is going to be spilt out. Now, I understand. I'm speculating right now, but there's some specific things in this prophecy that we need to pay attention to see if and when it gets fulfilled, because this prophecy has never been fulfilled in history. It's kind of like similar to the Damascus prophecy of Isaiah 17, has not yet been fulfilled in history. But I'll get to that in a moment. Let me get back to the prophecy itself. For God says, "For I will cause Elam to be dismayed before their enemies and before those who seek their life. I will bring disaster upon them, my fierce anger, says the Lord. And I will send the sword after them until I have consumed them." But then the prophecy ends up on a positive note. "I will set my throne in Elam, and I will destroy from there the kings and princes. But it shall come to pass in the latter days, the always an important phrase in the Hebrew, the Akarit Yahamim. The Akarit Yahamim. It's a very eschatological phrase in Hebrew. It shall come to pass in the latter days, I will bring back the captives of Elam, says the Lord. So first they're going to be scattered for some reason, but then at the end of days, he's going to bring them back. Now, I do believe that part of it will be at the return of Jesus, when he's cleansing the land and rebuilding during the millennium, but I won't jump ahead of myself. But the passage does put everything in a last days kind of scenario. A last days scenario where Elam's military might will be broken, and that the nation's population, as I just read, will be widely scattered. And the passage further states that, here's the thing about this that intrigues me. The passage states that it's because of the Lord's fierce anger against them. What could that fierce anger be? Could it be the fact that they keep building nuclear missiles to destroy Israel? Remember, God says, "He who touches Israel touches the apple of my eye." Why does God have a fierce anger against the Elamites? Or should we say, in modern terms, against the Iranians? And again, it's against the leadership. A lot of Iranians don't like the people, don't like what's going on. A lot of them want to be westernized. I won't go down that bunny trail. But God's angry with a fierce anger against the inhabitants of Elam. That's why he's going to destroy them. Now, many scholars believe, and I say wrongly, but who am I? I'm not a scholar. But many scholars believe that this was actually fulfilled either one of two times. Right there, it tells you it wasn't, because they can't pin down when it was fulfilled, because it hasn't been fulfilled. The particulars of this prophecy have never been fulfilled. And when it comes to prophecy, folks, you got to pay attention to particulars, because God doesn't deal with near misses or maybe or well, sort of means that. But some scholars believe that this was fulfilled when Nebuchadnezzar was king over Babylon, and he conquered the Elamites in his time. Or the other option is when Alexander the Great conquered Persia. But here's the point. Here's the issue with that. Because I won't get into that. But here's the point with that. The actual historical record doesn't show anything even remotely close to resembling the description and details of this prophecy. It hasn't happened yet. As much as they might want to attribute it to this conquest or that, it hasn't happened. Just much like, as I said a moment ago, the Damascus prophecy of Isaiah 17. It hasn't been fulfilled, and therefore it still remains to be a future event at this moment in time. And remember what God says, he puts it in the latter days. Now, as in all things, and I've shared this in the past, as in all things regarding biblical prophecy, all biblical prophecy has types and shadows and foreshadowings and further future developments and further fulfillments. Jewish prophecy doesn't work in a westernized mindset in a linear fashion. We in the West, our thinking is very linear, but biblical prophecy and Jewish thought is more of a spiral and it works in patterns that always seem to be unfolding and spiraling upward toward a greater and greater fulfillment. When you look at, in general, about Hebraic prophecy. In some ways, the writer of Ecclesiastes bears this out when he wrote, "There is nothing new under the sun, and that which has been is that which will be." That's just a general premise, a general understanding of what biblical prophecy is like. So the question remains for us, should we look forward to a greater and fuller, contemporaneously pertinent fulfillment of this prophecy in Jeremiah? And my conclusion is we absolutely should. Again, when? I don't know. Next week, next month, next year, 10 years. I'm not putting a time frame on it. I'm laying out the particulars of the prophecy and how things are lining up right now, because we just have to wait and watch and see. But it's certainly something to keep an eye on and be prepared for. Not to mention all the resulting and unintended consequences that can be, and we need to look at. Like I said, if we go in, like I said in the first block, what's China and Russia going to do? What are they going to do if we go into take out the Iranian nuclear capabilities? It seems to me, unless they break their treaties, unless they stab Iran in the back, and it's always possible, but not probable. Unless they do that, again, we're looking at a major conflagration, major war, we can't overlook that. We cannot, because this is significant. China and North Korea, even, and Russia they've been playing to make sure Iran achieves. The last month or two, they've been trying to help Iran accelerate their development to making at least 6 nuclear bombs before Trump's 2-month ultimatum runs out. That's what they've been working towards. A meeting between Iranian and Chinese officials in Beijing, I mentioned it a moment ago, followed by Iran's supreme leaders, the supreme leader, Khamenei. There's an outright rejection of Trump's warnings. Now, Trump's got a pretty good track record of keeping his promises. Trump's got a pretty good track record of saying if he's going to do something, if you don't do this, we're going to do this, and then he does it. So they're playing with fire when it comes to Trump. This isn't the Biden administration. This isn't the Obama administration, which between Obama and Biden, they really helped rebuild through the lifting of sanctions and the literal bringing in of pallets of cash. Remember when Obama left office, he brought in something like $150 billion or something like that in literal cash into Iran. It was crazy. But there's a new sheriff in town. But for Iran to be becoming so emboldened in what they're doing, you would almost think that they've received guarantees from China and Russia that they would jump in and protect the Iranian regime. They would support its nuclear program. They are supporting it. They're funding it in a lot of ways. They want to ensure that Iran acquires nuclear weapons before the end of Trump's deadline, which raises a question. I'm sure our intelligence agencies know this. I'm reading this out of Gatestone Institute. Very, very good, very, very good source. Very credible source. But if Gatestone Institute is reporting this, then the Trump administration knows this. So you got to wonder, okay, Trump's giving them a 2-month deadline, but maybe he's going to pull the trigger now because they're ready to break out with nuclear weapons now. They can't let that happen, because then Iran just engages in nuclear blackmail, and everyone in the world knows it, and including the Europeans, including those who might say, let's work this out diplomatically. But like Trump said in his letter, I want to work it out diplomatically. I prefer to work it out diplomatically. But if you don't, these are going to be the consequences. So Iran's bold rejection of Trump's threats may not be based on any internal strength that they really have, but on external guarantees. Beijing and Moscow have likely calculated that if the Iranian regime joins the nuclear club and possesses nuclear bombs before Trump's deadline expires and he takes action, then the West will be forced to accept a nuclear-armed Iran, just as it had to accept a nuclear-armed North Korea. And with Trump's ultimatum in place, this axis of evil, they're racing against the clock to ensure that Iran becomes a nuclear-armed state. And the logical conclusion of that is, if the U.S. and its allies fail to act immediately, the balance of power could shift permanently, and the West could lose the war before realizing it had even begun. Now, I just read that out of the Gatestone Institute, most of that, with a little bit of my own commentary. But I agree with it. I wouldn't have shared it if I didn't think it was very insightful and something that we got to consider. So there's all that. But I don't want to end on that sour note, because all of God's prophecies, he always talks about judgment. He always talks about what he's going to do, but there's always a redemptive purpose in it. And I like the way the prophecy in Jeremiah 49 ends. He says, I will set my throne in Elam and destroy her king and officials. Yeah, those Shia apocalyptic nut jobs. He's gonna destroy them. He's gonna remove them at some point in time. That's what he says. I will set my throne in Elam and destroy her kings and officials, declares the Lord. Yet I will restore. God is so awesomely gracious. Yet I will restore the fortunes of Elam in the days to come. And he says in another place, in the latter days. I do believe that will be fulfilled really when Jesus returns and he brings in his millennial kingdom. But having said that, this is an interesting thing, because, you know, folks, God says he's going to place his throne there. And this is a very enigmatic part of the entire prophecy, because we know the Bible makes it clear in many places that Jesus will reign from Jerusalem. There's not going to be a throne in Elam. He's going to reign from Mount Zion. So what's he saying there? Well, like I said, it's a little bit enigmatic. But, you know, the last 6 or 7 years, more than a million Iranians have converted to Christianity. More than 1 million Iranians who were Muslim have been becoming believers in Jesus. There's a huge underground church that's developed over the last 6, 7, 8 years in Iran. God has been working in the hearts. He's been working in the hearts of these individual Iranians. And there's been reports of miracles, dreams, and visions, so many that you really can't discount them. So many credible testimonies of how God is appearing in people. Jesus is appearing to them in dreams. Lifelong Muslims. And calling them to himself. And they're waking up saying, yes, I believe in Jesus. Yes, I've been deceived. I've heard so many of these testimonies. And it's happening. And I just think that's maybe plays into this a little bit, about God bringing back the fortunes of Elam in the last days, because there's going to be a very large contingency of believers who have gotten saved through all of God's dealings. God is moving supernaturally in the ever-growing underground church in Iran. People are being discipled. I read reports about it, credible reports about it all the time. He is reaching people. He's reaching souls. He's reaching Muslims through Bible translations that have never before previously existed. And now these translations are coming out in regional Iranian languages and dialects so that the people can understand the New Testament. They can understand the gospel. And God's been opening their hearts and speaking to their hearts, despite the regime, despite the ideology of the government, despite the conflicts both within Iran, within the nation itself, domestically, and all these outside pressures with possible war. In the midst of all of that, the good news is many Iranians are turning to Jesus. So when the Lord says in Jeremiah 49, yet I will restore the fortunes of Elam in the days to come. That's a glorious thing to look forward to. More than the destruction, more than the breaking of the bow, there's a purpose to what God is doing. It says, yes, in his fierce anger and wrath, he's going to destroy the princes and the king. But his heart is to redeem the people when you look at Jeremiah 49. So we do look forward, and I look forward to all the scriptures being fulfilled, of course. And we need to walk in wisdom and discernment in these days in which we live. We need to walk wisely because I've said this so many times, the days are evil. Writer of Proverbs says, when wisdom enters your heart and knowledge is pleasant to your soul, discretion will preserve you. Understanding will keep you to deliver you from the way of evil. Like Paul says, walk circumspectly, for the days are evil. Yeah, there's some terrible things, folks, coming down the pike. There really is. I know a lot of us like to ignore it. A lot of us don't want to consider it. A lot of us think our lives are going to go on the way they've been going on, especially here in America. But folks, I'm telling you, again and again and again throughout the years, don't be seduced, don't be sedated by domestic politics, whether we go through the good times, whether we go through the bad times. The thing we got to look forward to is the future times, for God's plans and purposes to come about. Because in the end, God's purposes will stand in the end. And as I have so often done in the past, so many years, so many times through the years, I have repeatedly urged this audience and anyone who would listen to get prepared as much as you are able for the times and days ahead on so many different levels. Get prepared. Be prepared spiritually above all things. You know, Paul said, whether I live or whether I die, it's gain. To live is Christ, to die is gain. You know, we've got eternal promises. We've got a promise that serves as an anchor behind the veil. So we don't have to be shaken and scared and running around because of all these different things. We need to be aware of them so that we can be prepared spiritually. We need to be aware of them so that we can, get our house in order, so to speak, spiritually, as well as emotionally, as well as materially, to whatever degree you're able to. Don't procrastinate. Don't put it off. Don't dismiss it, or you will be completely caught off guard. Because the world, folks, they're preparing for war. Whether you like it or not, whether you are aware of it or not, there is a call of preparation going out around the world. Israel and America and the UK and Europe, they are preparing for war. And in the midst of preparing for war, like I said earlier in the broadcast, the Pentagon sent 25% of our entire fleet of B-2 stealth bombers to the region. And now the European Union, this past week, The European Union is telling all of their citizens to store up on food and water because of the things that are going on with Russia and Ukraine. That's a whole other issue there. You know, we were told 2 weeks ago that there was a breakthrough and there was a ceasefire and that they were on the path to peace. Now, it's only gotten worse in the last 2 weeks. Russia has been bombing, what word do I want to use? Bombing the heck. Russia has been bombing the heck out of Ukraine. They've been bombing Kharkov the last several days, devastating it. And it kind of breaks my heart because I ministered in Kharkov back in the 90s. I preached in Kharkov. I helped, I led some pastor conferences, and not conferences, but pastor meetings there when the church was just being birthed after the fall of the Soviet Union. I have a special place in my heart for Kharkov. So it's just you know, if we didn't know the Word of God, it was true. If we didn't know that we had a hope, it could be in the natural. It definitely could be depressing. That's why we got to keep our eyes on the Lord. That's why we got to keep our eyes on the author and finisher of the faith. That's why we can't grow weary in doing good. Because in this world, you'll have tribulation. In this world, we will have tribulation. But Jesus said, do not fear, for I have overcome the world, and my peace I will give you. Not as the world gives you, but I'll give you. And we can have peace in our spirit, in our soul, and in our whole emotional being. We can have peace in the midst of all of this stuff. But as I said a moment ago, the European Union this past week has been urging citizens, and I'm reading this out of CNN, by the way. The European Union has been urging its citizens they should stock up on enough food and other essential supplies to sustain them for at least 72 hours in the event of a crisis, the UE has said. 72 hours, that's not, well, that's what they're advising, like do that right now, 72 hours. Those first 3 days, those first several days are the most important when a crisis and chaos breaks out. So definitely at the very least do that. But I've been saying for years, man, stock up as best you can. Stock your pantries up. Stock your food pantries up. Stock up on medical supplies. Stock up on toiletries. And do so for more than 3 days. Minimum 3 months at least. Yeah, I am a bit of a prepper. I'm not a crazy prepper, but the Bible tells us to be prepared. But the EU has been putting this out. In new guidance released Wednesday, that would have been yesterday, the Commission stressed the need for Europe to shift its mindset and to foster a culture of preparedness and resilience. That's what I'm trying to tell you in the spirit. Foster a culture in your spirit of preparedness, because the days are evil. God's word has got a lot to say about the things to come. There are specific prophecies like Jeremiah 49 that we can look to as guideposts and keep an eye on. And I'm out of time, and I'll be back for the second hour, so keep it right here on Faith FM, folks. I got to cut off this first hour right now. In the meantime, watch, stand fast in the faith. Be brave and be strong. And let all that you do be done in love. And keep it right here on Faith FM. And I'll be back right after the news.